Welcome to X3, One Topic, Three Pundits. I'm your host, John C. Dvorak. I'm here with Joseph Engo and Andrew Eisner to discuss the new, finally, iPad app for Facebook, which apparently people have been clamoring for. In fact, there's a column I wrote in this week's PC Magazine called There's an App for That or something like that, that you should read, because I find that this is maybe a paradigm shift. At least I'm now accepting the possibility that there's a paradigm shift in the way we're going to start looking at programs, websites, and applications. Because somebody at the office was complaining about the fact that she couldn't get onto her Facebook account on the iPad, and I said, so what? Just go on the web. And she says, no. She says,
just running it through Safari is fine.
Not the same, she said, as an app.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about, you know, the Facebook website, I mean, it works just fine on the iPad. There's no reason you need a native one.
Not the same as an app.
I mean, if you're talking about on the iPhone, yes, it actually works really nice on the iPhone, but on the iPad, it's, come on, just
well, there's something
Safari.
to that, the appification of, you know, computers, and people love those little bite-sized apps that, you know, you don't have to install and load and everything. But this Facebook app, the interesting thing is what's happening below the surface here is this has been like a year and a half in the coming, and so the question is, has there been a lot of negotiation going on between Facebook and Apple because of, you know, in terms of using things like Zynga and getting a piece of, you know, the action, and so all the while Facebook really has been slow in getting into the mobile space. So it's really sort of an interesting development here that this Facebook app finally launches, but meanwhile Facebook at the same time launches a new platform, I think it's called Spartan or something, that for web or browsing viewing of Facebook. So it's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out.
My assertion is that eventually, because of the closed nature and the fact that you can do more with an app in terms of user I/O, you're not limited to the browser and what it lets you do, that these things will eventually take over the whole landscape.
Yeah.
Even though it's like, I was very skeptical when Apple said they're going to, and even Microsoft suggests that they may be pushing their user interface toward apps with different, you know, iconization and the tiles and the rest of it. I was thinking, well, what's the point? But if you begin to seriously think about it, for example, in the waning days of the CD-ROM, if you can remember that far back, some of the I/O was pretty phenomenal. They'd have people walking on the screen, they'd have big cubes that you could check, and it was like very advanced. And then we all of a sudden took 20 steps backwards to be browser-centric with, you know, these clicks and this underlined text and the rest of it slow, crummy, slow to render, nothing really fancy, hardly any graphics. It took Flash to put some movement in there. But Microsoft, who was the leader in CD-ROMs, they bailed out of that and jumped on the internet as fast as they could, and went into the browser game, which distracted everybody. Apps have kind of pushed it back and said, look, you can still use the internet, but now with an app, you can get rid of this overhead of the browser. It just gets in the way. Who needs it?
Well, I mean, JavaScript executes pretty slowly. I mean, but, you know, as processors get faster, as JavaScript engines get more advanced, you know, web apps can get a lot more feature-rich. But when you have like a native app, it is a little bit faster because you're only downloading just little small segments of data instead of downloading the CSS, the JavaScript, all the images, and all that crap. So there is an advantage to having a native app. But I think that overall, long-term, we're going to be moving towards everything just being browser-based.
Oh, I'm not sure I agree with that
I'm
at all.
in complete disagreement with that, which is good. And so are you.
Well, I mean, first of all, the browser, I don't know about HTML5, but can that take advantage of all the functions inside of these mobile devices, the accelerometers, the gyroscopes,
that's where things like PhoneGap come
in. Okay, so we'll talk about PhoneGap later, but until then, a browser is basically just, you know, a web page.
It's a middleman.
Yeah, and I think we're moving, I agree, I think we're moving towards apps. Just like you said, your friend said, hey, it's not the same, and they prefer apps. I think, even though for the developer it's probably not as easy because they have to maintain different code bases, right? An Android app and an iPhone app and now a Mango app. But still, I agree. I think it's apps are the future. and
Now,
browsers may go by the wayside.
Now, the other thing that you're not on this bandwagon, but with this in mind, will that change the landscape for the internet in general, specifically search engines, and the future of Google? Because if you don't, because I'm noticing that people are not, to this day actually, if you think about it, because Google's been around for, I don't know, 15 years.
Yeah.
I still can sit next to somebody and show them how to do a Google search that is brain dead. You know, you just put in 3-5 keywords and you find what you're looking for, and they're always like, they're kind of bug-eyed, gape jaw. And wow, oh yeah, okay. And I still get people that send me emails saying, how do I find, and I just send, I usually, and I think this is a good habit to get into, when somebody sends you a stupid question that they could Google, I usually do the Google search, and then I cut and paste the Google from the URL, and so when they click on it, they get the Google search.
There's a website, I forget the name of it, but I think it's called Let Me Google That For You. So basically you enter in the search terms or whatever, and then you send somebody a link, and it shows the search engine you typing out these keywords and saying, here, you could have done this yourself.
Right.
And you know, it's funny too, when I'm giving tech support to some relative over the phone, instead of saying, go to the browser and type in this address, I say, just go to Google, type in the name of the website you're going to, and I'm feeling lucky. But you're right, I mean, maybe what'll happen is Google will just be another app, or Google will just continue to be the portal, the one-stop, the first stop on the web, and then you go to some other sites. But we'll see. I mean, of course, that doesn't make sense because you really need to go from Google to an app.
Yeah, I think that for one thing, there's at least 6 that I think I've found app search engines that look just for apps, which I think is going to be Google's going to buy 1 or 2 of them. I can assure you. And I think there's going to be a lot of that, but the app phenomenon is more than when I first saw that. It's for phones, stupid. I thought it was dumb, and I was in Joe's camp, which is everything's going in this other direction. But the more when I got this, it's not the same question, and I started thinking about it. For example, if AOL never went to the, AOL would have been a perfect app if we had not gotten sidetracked by the browser phenomenon. Because AOL is a closed system, and it needed to stay a closed system to stay viable, and which, by the way, makes me think that Facebook doesn't quite get it, because they should have been on this bandwagon a long time ago and actually be pushing toward it, because with an app you close off the rest of the world. You're not jumping around like you are on a browser.
And apps sort of remind me of shareware of the old days. Remember, when you used to have huge shareware libraries and everybody just loaded their computers up with shareware. Now I think you're doing the same thing with apps, and now 400,000 apps in the iTunes store, and I mean, and meanwhile, shareware and PCs are fading away.
It just really reminds me of thin clients. Remember back in like the early 90s or mid 90s, everybody was all over the place about, thin clients, There's all these Linux projects set up for,
You're associating apps with thin clients?
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
The Chromebook.
Because they are like a lot.
Chromebook is a new thin client, but I don't think that's going anywhere.
But it's browser oriented.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere either.
But if you think about it, apps are pretty much the same way.
This is funny coming from you.
The apps won't run without some sort of server side.
I find it amusing and ironic that you would come up with this counterintuitive answer to this debate, because you're the big Apple nut. You're the one that buys every iPhone that comes out, usually 2 of them, and all the iPads. You have like
it's funny. I technically have 2 iPhone 4S's on pre-order right now.
So, but meanwhile, you're seeing it differently. Anyway, this is a topic of conversation that will be continuing. You've been watching X3.